Welcome to 10 Solos in 10 Days. Over the next 10 days, I'll be covering 10 awesome prog rock and metal solos. I've already done a few of these 10 in 10 days series. I did 10 rhythms in 10 days, as well as 10 riffs in 10 days. I'll put links to those down below if you want to check them out. I've recorded covers for each of these 10 solos, including a cover with the tab on screen, and I'll be doing lessons on each solo, sometimes covering the entire solo, and sometimes just a few of the coolest licks. There's a really nice variety of solos here, and most of these were suggested to me on the Prog School Discord channel. If you want to hang out there, you can follow the link in this video's description. A few of these solos were ones that I picked out myself personally as well. One last thing before we jump into the first solo, you'll notice a big difference in the video quality on some of these solos. I started filming this series back in September, and I started doing the covers back then, and my Canon 70D, my trusty old camera that I used for everything on this channel, died on me in November, so I was forced to do a much needed camera upgrade. So 7 of these solos were filmed on my old camera, including this first one we're going to talk about. And then all of the lessons and a few of the solos were recorded on my new camera. That's why they look so much better. So with that out of the way, let's get into this first solo. This is the solo from Accolade II by Symphony X, one of my favorite bands of all time. And I've talked about Symphony X a number of times on this channel. I did a big lesson on the riffing style of Michael Romeo. I think one of my best early lessons. I also did a lesson on the polymeters from Accolade I, as well as I ranked all of the Symphony X albums last year. So you can check out those videos if you want some more Symphony X content. This is kind of a different solo for Romeo. It's not the really crazy neoclassical Yngwie Malmsteen inspired shred solo. This has a lot more of a melodic feel to it and a lot more bluesy ideas here as well, which is something that Romeo does quite frequently actually, is use a lot of pentatonic and blues scales kind of mixed in with the classical ideas. One disclaimer here, I am in standard tuning and Michael Romeo tunes his guitar one step down. So that means everything you're seeing here is actually 2 frets lower than where you'd see Romeo play it. I didn't need to tune my guitar down because there are no open strings in this solo, so it's just easier to keep things in standards. So everything I'm doing here is related to standard tuning, the tab you'll see on screen, all the theory I'm talking about. But if you're tuned down a full step, you're just gonna have to shift everything up 2 frets. There's 2 sections to this solo, and this first part, which is the vast majority of the solo, is all in C minor. Just kind of going over this Iron Maiden style chugging riff, and there's this little fill in the background, which is right from C natural minor. So Romeo's gonna hang out in C minor for all of this, but he's gonna do a couple of interesting things, and one of them is to play a lot of pentatonics and a lot of blues scales. So the solo starts like this. So straight up bluesy licks, that's right from the blues scale. Even plays that blues note right away. And then it's into this cool lick, which is probably the hardest one from the whole solo to play. Basically just straight 16th notes for like 5 or 6 measures, and there's some really interesting fingerings here. One other disclaimer is that I do kind of an interesting fingering here where I shift up to this next position to do some of these pedal point licks. I have a feeling Romeo might be kind of staying more in this original pentatonic box. For me, I had to work out a fingering that worked well for the way I pick and stuff, so I was able to get this nice and clean. You may want to experiment with some of these fingerings. I think if I was to do this more, I might even change a few from where I have it now. Just keep that in mind if you're playing this. You might want to change some of your fingerings. So we have a lot of pedal points in this part of the solo, which means we're going to keep pedaling off of the same note. So in that case, I keep going back up to that E flat, and there's a few other pedal points in here as well. So it starts like this, just pulling off to that E flat in the pentatonic, and then we go up the scale. And here we get the 9th, so that's outside of our pentatonic. And this. There we have an A flat, so we're kind of living in C natural minor now. And then when it shifts down, We get A naturals, which is more from C Dorian. So he's kind of combining these different minor sounds together. And the Dorian sounds really nice in this more bluesy context. And it's a really interesting combination to go right from natural minor to Dorian. But we're kind of just going over this one C note. So he can mess with the tonality a little bit because of that. So there, we're back in the pentatonic box. But he throws in that major 6 from Dorian. Really cool stuff. So you have this real classical feel up here. With the pedal point, but he's also doing it in a pentatonic scale for a lot of this. So you get that bluesy feel combined with the classical feel. Very interesting, and not something you see a ton from Romeo. He kind of does one or the other. Usually it's like pentatonic stuff and then some classical stuff. So it's a very interesting combination, kind of going back and forth between those two things here. From here, we go to this part. Some more melodic ideas, and this is all right from C minor. Cool pre-bend. Brings in some bar work there as well. Then we get another fast lick. Once again, right from C minor. We have a B flat major arpeggio mixed in there. And it's right back to pentatonic. Blues note. So again, mixing this classical idea of arpeggios and scales with pentatonics. And then we get a chord switch. So here it goes to an F minor, and he lands on an F, and then it's to G major. So that's our 5 chord in C minor. And he's going to play just a G7 arpeggio. But he does it all on one string. This is a very common Romeo trick. So he's playing a G7 arpeggio. All on one string. And then when he gets here, it's down this kind of classic G major shape. And he's doing that with hammer-ons from nowhere. It ends on that G major there, and you would think from there it'd go back to C minor. That's our 5 chord in C minor, but it doesn't. They actually modulate up to G sharp minor, so a half step above where we ended. Very awkward key change, but it works really well. I think because it's only a half step above, but it's a really unusual key change, not something you'd hear very often. And Symphony X, especially older Symphony X, has a lot of these weird key changes, which I think is really cool. And we're actually going to get another key change at the end of the solo, but that's the first section of the solo. This last part of the solo is super melodic, and it leads right back into the chorus. We're in 3/4 now. The chord progression is like this: G sharp minor, B, F sharp, E, D sharp major, and then it modulates to E flat. So they actually do the same sort of modulation they just did earlier, where you play a major chord, like G major, and then go a minor chord a half step above, D sharp minor. That's actually how it moves into the chorus as well. You have D sharp major, half step above to E minor. So same interesting sort of key change happening here as well. On top of this, though, we have this. And right there is where E minor hits. He's very much following the chords here. So on G sharp minor, B major, F sharp, E, D sharp, E minor. Those are all chord tones that he's landing on there. And of course, it's very melodic. Really good expressive techniques here. A lot of bar work. And then the solo actually goes into the vocals a little bit, which is a really cool effect. I really like that. So Russell Allen starts singing, but Romeo does a whole nother bend after he starts singing, which lands on the fifth of the chord that happens there, which is a D major chord. So most of the solo is this cool, groovy C minor thing, lots of pentatonic ideas, some of that pedal point classical stuff, a lot of really awesome licks in here that you can grab from. And then it breaks out into this new key with this big melodic idea right back into the chorus. And I think this is a pretty unusual Romeo solo in the way that it's constructed and played, but it's really cool and there's a lot of awesome things in here that you should steal from it. Here's the whole solo with the tab on screen. So there you have it, Michael Romeo's solo from Accolade II for day 1 of 10 solos in 10 days. I'll be back tomorrow for day 2, but if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Till then, stay proggy.